What happens when you trust a stranger? One man's terrifying story. After a long and exhausting shift, Sam Wilson couldn't shake the hunger gnawing at his stomach. It had been a grueling day at the warehouse, filled with heavy lifting and relentless deadlines. As he drove through the quiet streets of Kenton, Maryland, his mind was focused solely on one thing: grabbing a quick meal and heading home to unwind. The clock on his dashboard flashed past midnight as he pulled into a fast food restaurant, its neon lights flickering against the backdrop of a darkening sky. He ordered a burger and fries, the aroma of fried food momentarily distracting him from his fatigue. As he sat in the dimly lit booth, he scrolled through his phone, half listening to the chatter of late-night customers and the sound of the deep fryer sizzling in the kitchen. Once he finished, he tossed the remnants of his meal into the trash and stepped back into the cool night air, feeling the fatigue settle heavier on his shoulders. Climbing into his truck, he took a moment to breathe deeply, savoring the fleeting comfort of a full stomach. Just as he was about to pull out of the parking lot, he spotted a figure sprinting toward him, arms flailing wildly. A stranger was running, desperation etched across his face. Sam's instincts kicked in. He hesitated, hand hovering over the gear shift, unsure of what to do. The stranger reached the window, breathless and frantic, explaining that his sister was in labor and he needed a ride to the hospital. Sam studied the man's face, trying to read his intentions. Something felt off. The man's eyes darted nervously, and there was a wildness about him that sent a chill down Sam's spine. It was late, he didn't know this guy, and everything about the situation seemed suspicious. So he politely declined, saying he wasn't going that way and needed to get home. The stranger's expression fell, shoulders slumping as he turned to walk away. Sam felt a pang of guilt tug at his conscience. It was just a ride, after all, and who wouldn't want help during such a critical moment? "Wait," he called out, surprising himself with his decision. "I'll take you partway." The man's face lit up with gratitude as he climbed into the passenger seat, relief washing over him. Sam started driving, trying to shake off the unease settling in his stomach. They traveled a few miles down the road, and the stranger directed him, each turn taking them further away from the familiarity of home. As they approached a quiet stretch of road lined with trees, Sam decided it was time to stop. He pulled over and turned to the stranger, explaining, "This is as far as I can take you. I need to get home." He didn't want to stray too far, especially not at this hour. Suddenly, the stranger's demeanor shifted. His expression darkened, and he leaned forward, eyes glinting with anger. "What do you mean? You can't just leave me here," he yelled, his voice rising. Panic surged through Sam as he realized the gravity of the situation. The stranger began fumbling in his pocket, and in an instant, Sam saw the flash of a blade, a screwdriver. "Hand over your keys and wallet, or I'm going to kill you." In that terrifying moment, Sam's instincts kicked into overdrive. He quickly turned off the engine, ripped the keys from the ignition, and bolted from the truck. He spotted a convenience store glimmering in the distance, its lights a beacon of hope. As he ran, he glanced back and saw the stranger sprinting after him, screwdriver in hand, eyes wild with determination. Fear propelled him forward, but he quickly realized he wouldn't make it to the store before the man caught up. Sam's heart raced, and just when he thought escape was impossible, he stopped, raising his hands in surrender. Okay, I'll give you a ride. Just don't hurt me." The stranger stopped abruptly, a twisted smile spreading across his face as he approached. Sam could feel the cold metal of the screwdriver poking into his back as he led him back to the truck, every step feeling like a countdown to disaster. Once inside, Sam started the engine and slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The stranger barely had time to react. He was left standing on the roadside, confusion painting his features as Sam sped away, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Relief washed over him as he merged onto a quieter street, the danger receding into the night. But as he drove, a nagging thought clawed at his mind. What if the man wasn't done with him? Sam decided to take the long way home, circling through neighborhoods to make sure the stranger wasn't following him. He drove for nearly an hour, his heart rate finally beginning to settle as he reassured himself that he was safe. But as he turned onto his street, his blood ran cold. There, walking casually down the road, was the stranger, no longer frantic, but with a sinister calm that sent shivers down Sam's spine. Panic surged anew. Without thinking, Sam threw his truck into reverse and sped away from the scene. His heart hammered in his chest as he dialed 911, his hands shaking as he explained the situation to the dispatcher. They promised to send an officer, and Sam waited nervously at a nearby payphone, glancing around to see if he could spot the man lurking in the shadows. When the police arrived, Sam shared every detail, still rattled by the night's events. "I think he might know where I live," he said, glancing back toward his house. The officer agreed to escort him home, but as they approached, Sam felt a sense of foreboding. What if the stranger had already found a way inside? As they pulled into the driveway, Sam's stomach twisted in knots. The officer instructed him to stay put as he checked the area. Relief washed over Sam when the officer confirmed there were no signs of trouble around his property. But before he left, Sam thought of his mother, Alice, who lived alone just behind his house. "Could you check on my mom?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. "She's older, and I'd hate to think something could have happened." The officer nodded, making his way across Sam's backyard to Alice's home. Sam watched, anxiously biting his nails, as the officer disappeared into the shadows. Moments later, a commotion erupted from Alice's house. The officer called for backup, and Sam's heart sank as he rushed to follow. When he reached the back door, he found it smashed open, glass scattered on the floor. The officer stood at the threshold, gun drawn, yelling for Alice. Silence answered back. The officer moved cautiously inside, leading Sam through the darkened house. They called her name, but only silence greeted them. As they ascended the stairs, Sam's heart pounded with dread. At the top, they found a trail of blood leading to Alice's bedroom. Sam felt sick, dread coiled in his stomach as they approached the door. When they entered, Sam's worst fears were confirmed. There on the bed lay Alice, lifeless. The world around Sam shattered in that moment. It turned out that after Sam had ditched the stranger, the man, later identified as Marcus Gray, had wandered the neighborhood, looking for a place to break in. In a cruel twist of fate, Marcus stumbled into Alice's home, unaware it belonged to Sam. When she confronted him, fearful but brave, he attacked her with the same screwdriver he had used against Sam. He hadn't wanted to be identified, and in that desperate moment, he took the life of an innocent woman. As the police apprehended Marcus, they learned he had been a transient, living off the streets with a history of petty crimes. He had never intended to murder anyone. It was all a series of unfortunate events and wrong choices. He confessed that targeting Sam had been a whim, a desperate gamble in the darkness of the night. In the aftermath, Sam was left to grapple with the haunting reality of what had transpired. The police found him a victim of circumstance, a man who had tried to help another in need, only to have that act of kindness lead to tragedy. With a heavy heart, he reflected on that night, forever changed by the fleeting decisions that spiraled into a nightmare. Marcus Gray was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, leaving Sam to navigate the shadows of grief and guilt. The memory of that night haunted him, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the unforeseen consequences of a single moment's choice. As he stood in his driveway, staring into the darkness where everything had changed, Sam realized that sometimes the world can be a cruel and unpredictable place, and that kindness can sometimes lead to the most unexpected and devastating outcomes.